I'm honored to take part in this wonderful day of research commemorating the 400th anniversary of the LUDOVISI papacy. Alessandro Ludovisi, better known, as you all know, as Pope Gregory XV, and his voracious art collecting cardinal nephew, Ludovico Ludovisi, as we have already heard this afternoon, were arguably Guercino's most important early patrons. The works the painter completed in Rome for the papal family almost immediately fueled his rise to international fame. It's still a mystery, however, why Guercino left the Eternal City so soon after the Pope's death in 1623 and returned straight away to Cento. At this pivotal moment, the artist might have speculated that the imprimatur of having worked essentially as court painter to the Ludovisi in Rome and having achieved no less than the production of an altarpiece for St. Peter's would be sufficient basis for attracting important clients in the future wherever he might settle, even in his small town of Cento. And of course, he was right. Guercino's mail order business at Cento from 1623 to 1642 was a huge success. He even occasionally received commissions for pictures for the Barberini and for Roman churches. Sometimes the periphery can be the center if it's Guercino working in the periphery. But one thing you cannot do by mail order, of course, is execute fresco cycles. Indeed, with the exception of the Piacenza frescoes of 1626 to 27 and a few minor projects, Guercino never again undertook the serious work of a frescante that had occupied him many times in his youth, and then significantly when he arrived in Rome, where he not only worked on the Casino Ludovisi decorations, but as you can see on the screen, also on the ceilings of Palazzo Patrizzi, now Costa Gutti, and of Palazzo Lancelotti. As has already been mentioned today by Martina Cataldo, I regard Guercino as a frescante riluttante, a reluctant fresco painter. Already in his early period, Guercino told one of his patrons that he had too many commissions for gallery paintings and altarpieces to be able to sign on in any serious way to a large, time-consuming, collaborative fresco project. As talented a frescante as Guercino clearly was, especially as evinced by his work during the 2 years he lived in Rome, he seems to have had a rather obvious lack of interest later on in his career, compared, say, to Domenichino and Lanfranco, in regularly pursuing mural and ceiling decorations. Many times I've wondered whether Guercino's problem with working as a decorator was the technique itself, whether he was unable to accept the limitations of color and shading in mural painting. He may have been frustrated that he could not achieve the range of tones he was used to producing in his works on canvas, such as the sublime capture of Samson in the Met from 1619. I also have questioned whether mural and ceiling painting limited his usual process, as we know it from his oil painting projects, of making dozens and dozens of drawings, each typically with numerous pentimenti, and then redesigning his compositions and figures throughout the painting phase. Did decorating, in short, cramp his style and creative process? Only now, thanks to the brilliant work of Chiara, Barbara, and their great equipe organized at the University of Bologna at Ravenna, can we begin to gain some true insight into Guercino's atteggiamento, his inclinations as a fresco painter. And I must say that virtually everything I'm learning from the diagnostic team's analyses indicates that Guercino made fresco painting conform, bend, and even warp to his stylistic ideas and idiosyncratic creative process as much as possible. Pentimenti abound, He used full-scale cartoons, as we just saw in the video, and here's a screenshot to remind you, pouncing the perforations with carbon dust to transfer his outlines. But then, in typical Guercino fashion, he did not always follow the designs he had planned, but made changes while painting. He moved cartoons. I think I understood from the presentation that this is what happened here in the Drapery of Honor. And Guercino may have redesigned lightly with a piece of charcoal or black chalk. Please correct me afterwards if I've misunderstood. He painted over outlines he didn't like. I'm sure he counted on the fact that from the ground, even with the low ceiling in the Sala dell'Aurora, viewers would not be able to see with the naked eye the remains of any unfollowed, unfrescoed light sketching. It would perhaps be helpful if I do a quick synthesis of what I have learned from the team's analysis, not only from their presentation today, but from a very lucky visit to the Casino Ludovisi at their generous invitation over a year ago. And I also thank Principessa Ludovisi for her gracious hospitality on that memorable occasion as well. On the ground floor of the Casino Ludovisi, other than one general area of blue in the ceiling, which seems to have been done in buon fresco, that is, painting with pigment brushed directly into the still wet intonical layer, the Aurora ensemble is not, I repeat, not done in buon fresco at all. If you'll pardon a really bad pun, in Guercino's pictures that feature dawn, day, night, and the hours, there is a complete absence of giornate. He did not use true fresco technique, which creates daily sections or giornate whose boundaries over decades become more and more distinct as each area dries and pulls away slightly from its neighbor. But we do not have a complete understanding of the techniques used in Guercino's earlier murals, since some key works have not survived. It is clear that among the extant works, only a few small scenes by him were done in true fresco. The vast majority of his early murals, like those undertaken here at Casa Panini, seem to have been done entirely a secco. Some areas may even have been reinforced with oil paint. Frankly, I'm not sure Guercino, arriving in Rome in 1621, could have done a proper job in true fresco, even if he had wanted to. At the Casino Ludovisi, in-depth chemical analysis of pigments has not been done entirely, but the Squadra Diagnostica has concluded from infrared and several other types of analysis that Guercino used principally two techniques. First, as they said, mezzo fresco, literally half fresco, in which Guercino moistened a section of the ceiling with water and then applied pigment. And alternatively, fresco secco, in which, as you know, you brush the tempera onto dried plaster using a binder or in Italian, a legante, such as egg or glue. Now, if there's time, we should ask the team whether this was an orthodox painting method, mezzo fresco, sometimes adjacent to a fresco secco, and whether Guercino's colors that were applied with mezzo fresco have held up well over these past 4 centuries. And the second question for the Squadra: how much can you put Guercino's unorthodox fresco technique into a wider context? Did other painters in Bologna or Rome work this way? Is this technica mista or mixed technique of mezzo fresco or secco painting something that we find typically done elsewhere? Would Guercino have been ridiculed in Rome for painting this way, for not using the classic fresco technique that Annibale and his pupils, Domenichino Albani, etc., used, Guido Reni used? What would have been the reception to Guercino's fresco technique, painting technique, mural technique in Rome? That's a question. I conclude with one final topic, which is the fruit of several wonderful conversations with Barbara, Chiara, and their team. And this has to do with the question of the collaboration of Tassi and Guercino. The literature has always stated that the quadratura specialist Agostino Tassi did the illusionistic architecture for the piano nobile ceiling of fame, which you see on the right, as well as for the ground floor ceiling and walls of day, aurora, and night. I'm just showing you note and a bit of the aurora ceiling on the left. Since I first started teaching, I always point out to my students the brilliant, witty way the quadratura in the cave of Notte was painted so as to give a plausible illusion that the beautiful stonework had fallen away long ago due to neglect. It now reveals its crumbling infrastructure, no doubt, as some scholars have said, to suggest that the Borghese regime of Paul V had run Rome into the ground and that the city sorely awaited the renovatio of the Ludovisi family, the lux, the light that would, as Carolyn Wood has written, take Rome out of darkness, ushering in a new age of enlightenment. This area of the ceiling and upper wall seems like something Tassi would never have contemplated. Indeed, this passage, and I'm talking about the area here of the Cave of Night, this passage has all the stylistic and painterly characteristics of Guercino himself. Now, I can get carried away in some of my undergraduate lectures and suggest, probably wrongly, that Guercino might have actually painted over some of Tassi's quadratura to achieve this bravura passage. We cannot fail to emphasize the importance of Guercino's ideas in the Aurora ensemble. He had not only ridiculed the old-fashioned scheme of quadro di portato employed by his rival Guido Reni in his Aurora for Scipione Borghese of some 7 years prior, shown in the upper right, but he had thrown down the gauntlet to the quadraturisti like Tassi as well, unifying ceiling and sidewall, time, space, and action in a way no artist in Rome had ever before accomplished. Indeed, the Squadra Diagnostica will propose, but they can speak for themselves, that the quadratura in the Aurora ceiling is all done by Guercino himself, since it differs so fundamentally in all aspects, from the handling of perspective to the design of ornament to the use of color and shadow, typical of Agostino Tassi. Look at the classic quadratura Tassi designed and executed in the Fame in the right slide. They're totally different from what Guercino's done on the left. I had always assumed that the rusticity of the quadratura in the Aurora was something Guercino designed, but had Tassi execute. Thanks to the Squadra's insights and observations and technical examinations, I was obviously wrong about the Aurora quadratura. It's all Guercino, 100%. Thank you.